All right, good evening, everyone. I hope you're um so just before we begin, um can you guys verify that you can hear me loud and clear? Okay. So Mahmoud is has given a response. All right, that's very good. Okay. So I think I may I don't know if okay. So it looks like we have four people on the call. That's me and Joshua and two participants. So I don't know if we should give a little bit of time to those that may be coming in late, or we can basically just start. So maybe let's start in 5 minutes time. So once it is 10 minutes after five, we can basically begin. Okay. So, but in the meantime, how I hope everyone is fine. Um, I think I may want the microphone settings to be basically available. So you can just mute yourself and then unmute when you need to talk. Can you guys confirm that you can unmute yourself when you need to talk?
Yes, you can.
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I
can you
can.
see my, all right, that's good. All right. And can you see my screen as well?
Yes, I can see your screen.
All right. Those are the things I need for today. All right, so let's just give it 4 minutes. Perhaps maybe if anybody wants to join, then start. Okay. Okay. In the meantime, I mentioned it before today, probably a little bit too late that it will be a prerequisite that we install Node.js on our computer. Have any of us done that? Um, okay. So I think I will take that thumbs up from Mahmoud to mean that um, he has installed Node.js. How about you, Michael?
I have it
Okay.
installed, but right now my laptop is not on, so but I have it installed.
All right, that's okay. That's fine. How about you, Yinka? Welcome to the call. So I was asking if you have installed Node.js on your computer.
Oh yeah, good afternoon. I have
Good
it installed.
afternoon. All right,
Once
that's
again,
okay.
I'm late.
Yes. All right, so we are giving 2 minutes for everyone else who wants to join. So by 5:10, we are starting. In case some people are running late. Okay. Would I tell people just to try from? All right, so it's just 1 minute left. Let me see if I can also join from my phone so I can monitor things as well. All right. All right, so I think it's fine to start. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Akorede once again. Thank you for joining. Okay. So before we begin, I basically just want us to have a little bit of update from where we stopped last week. So a little bit of recap first of all. So as we all know, we joined the Node.js track, and then we introduced ourselves to the fundamentals of backend development. So basically, these are general principles that follow from one language or one framework to the other. So we are not doing things that are very, what's it called? JavaScript or Express.js or Node.js centric. These are general philosophy that is language agnostic. So I told you that in order for you to move well, you need to make use of your tools. So your YouTube, books, Pre-Code Camp, GitHub, whatever. And I think I also particularly mentioned one, existing repositories, okay? So if possible, because most people lock down their code in private repositories. So if possible, you find a public repository that is basically doing a backend code. It is very, very like it's based on backend, is a basic backend code base, and it's with tools that you're familiar with. It's very okay if you just like take down the entire thing and then try and see if you can reverse engineer some of what some of what is being implemented. Okay, so because you are kind of taking a glimpse into the mind of someone who is more advanced than you are. So you kind of get some ideas. I really found that to be very helpful. Okay. So, and okay, we talked about how the internet works. Basically, you think of your backend in terms of requests and responses and how you manage the server and databases as well. And then we talked about the fundamentals of backend. Basically, you're always processing data, you're always managing the server, you are implementing business logic, and then you want a system that is reliable, performant, scalable, and secure. Okay, so those are the fundamentals that will guide you throughout your backend development process. This is not an exhaustive list. I basically wrote it off the top of my head when I was doing so, but it's kind of it should ring true to any backend developer. Okay? So, and then we talked about the general development process, understanding the problem, identifying the requirements, deciding on the tools, basically pros and cons. You weigh them very well, then design the architecture. You may be making use of a sheet of paper or some tools for that. Or if you do this basically goes here, goes here, drawing your arrow, drawing your circles and whatever. You just have an idea of what you want your system to look like. So when you're done with that, then you actually start writing your code. So from writing your code, you decide what you want to be a public interface. So what you want these things to be things that are basically publicly available. And those will be your API endpoints. Okay. Then you design your database models, and then you try and decide how your data is flowing around. Okay. So also you think of implementing business logic and test the APIs you've written. You ensure that you log things out so that at least from time to time you know what is going on with your system. And write documentation too. Very, very important. Your API is meant to be used by a front-end engineer and other back-end engineers, and everybody who is basically working on the system as well. So you really want to have them be able to read what is going on. So there's a plan, you plan for scalability, reliability, and performance. You debug and you deploy and continue maintaining and adding some improvements, basically. Okay, so we ended the day talking about APIs and telling you that a good idea is for you to have a strong foundation in JavaScript. Okay, so luckily for you guys, I feel with the code that we are going to be writing is going to be very clear, and you basically just, at least anything you don't know, basically you ask your resources. You can just take a code snippet, give it to ChatGPT. What does this do? What does this mean? Why is it done this way? And you're good to go. Okay. So those are the things that we talked about in the last class. I think I just realized now that I did not share this curriculum to you guys. So you can also check and see if you can learn things ahead. Okay, but this is what it is though. And like I said last week, there will be some updates to it as time goes on. So this week, we really want us to dive into Node.js and Express.js well. Okay, so Node.js and Express.js is what we are really diving into. And those are the things that will formulate what we are going to be doing. Okay, and also I've decided on what our capstone project is. So it is a project that I worked on earlier this year. I did not want to pick up something that was previously that is basically too easy. I wanted a project that will get our hands dirty really well. So we walk through something that what's it called? Will require some level of detail, some level of work, basically. So we are going to be building the back end to a carpooling platform. Okay, so let me show you guys what the front end looks like. Okay, so the requirements and everything will basically be showing you guys later on. So I worked hand in hand with someone to create this. It is a personal project. It's not even a production level backend software, basically. But I wanted us to work with something that we can see how it goes. You can see how the ideas behind everything works. Okay, and then we can see how everything come together like a complete what's it called now? Is what we have. So this is basically what we are going to be building. We are going to be testing the APIs together. We're going to build and we're going to see an idea, a glimpse into how the front end wants to consume this code. Okay, so that's what we have there. Okay, I hope we can still see. Okay, all right. So that's the kind of things we are going to be doing. All right. So, but then basically, this is the curriculum. I will share it when we are done. And in the meantime, I also created a GitHub repository where we can put our stuff together, where you'll find the code that we write starting from today, basically. So we are going to have this here. I called it MLSA-Node.js. Okay, so this is where we are going to be storing some things that we will be writing together. Basically, I write the code as your presence, and then I push it here to be available. Okay, so we are doing everything live. We are going to be thinking the steps together live. We'll make mistakes live. We do everything as much as possible that we can do live. Okay, so before we start with today's class, okay, so I didn't have enough time to prepare the complete slides, but you know, as far as we are going everything live, let's have fun with it. So before I start, can anybody, if you have any question that you have, maybe we should ask so we can actually formally begin today's class. And let me see if I can share my entire screen because this back and forth is not, let me see. Okay, no, done. Okay, yeah. All right, so we can still see the screen now, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it now. So when we say the Node.js stack, okay, so One thing you get that happened that I don't really know this thing is that we like to say the Node.js stack, but I feel like the Node.js stack is actually not very descriptive of what tools we are using. Okay, so because Node.js is just is a runtime. Okay, so it's what allows us to be able to run JavaScript code outside of the browser. Okay, so it is a runtime. It's just like, say, if you're familiar with other programming languages, you go to the website, you download the software which allows you to be able to run your code in that particular programming language on your machine. Okay, so Node.js is basically what we have that for JavaScript as well. So if you're familiar with JavaScript in the front-end world, you know that whenever you write your code, you basically query the entire thing on your browser. But in this case, your Node.js is what allows you to have it running on the machine. And it brought about some interesting developments. Okay, the interesting development is that you can finally write JavaScript. You can finally write JavaScript code for the servers. Okay, due to this Node.js runtime that we have, we can finally write JavaScript code for the servers. So one advantage that JavaScript has over other programming languages basically is that you can now finally have a complete JavaScript stack. Okay, we can have you writing code from on the front end where you make use of your tools like your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or you make use of different frameworks or libraries like, say, React or Next.js. Or, I mean, if you are coming from the front end world, you basically know how important JavaScript is in that case. And now on the back end world, you could write your code in different programming languages as well, not just specifically JavaScript. If you decide to have your backend in Java, in Go, in Python, and different languages like that. But the advantage that Node.js brings is that we could have both the front end and back end code in a single programming language, and then we don't have to be switching context every time. Okay, so for example, when you take this code now, okay, so when I come over here and come here, for example, and say something like this, console.log, checking things out, basically. So it's basically prints it out. So the reason why we could have things running this way on my local machine is because it is utilizing the Node.js runtime. That's the basic fundamental with that. So basically, think of Node.js as the runtime and allows you to have to be able to run JavaScript or code for the server. So like we said last week, your server is basically another machine that you are basically going to be communicating with between your own computer and yes, over the internet, basically. Okay, so this Node.js now is not the only JavaScript runtime that we do have. There's also one that is fairly new. It's called Born. Okay, it is a fast runtime. It's not that, as you can see from this JavaScript, like you can see here, it basically got released in September 14, 2021. So it's not yet a very long time ago. Okay, so I have basically never worked with in on like I don't even have it installed basically. So I can't say for what is different, how fast it is, or whatever. So basically, I've always been working with Node.js. It's good enough. Okay. So another thing you want to also do is that you want to install Node.js packages. Okay, so say for example, we want to make use of Express.js now. Express.js is a library that is built on top of Node that is specifically for building backend. Okay, so it's basically you want to use it to write backend code that does some of those things we've talked about last week. You think of your Express.js, and Express.js is not the only library or framework that we have in this Node.js environment, in this Node.js world. We also have Nest. Okay, so this is Nest.js. Okay, So we also have Next.js as well for building node backend services. Okay, you also have Next as well, but the one we are going to be using in this case is Express.js. Okay, so I think we also have Fastify. I can't even make up example off the top of my head right now, but we have different libraries and framework that basically allows us to do that. But basically, what they basically allow us to do is that they allow us to write, to basically start up a server. And when you start up your server, you define your routes. Or once you have this particular code, you have this particular your website or so, you can basically go here, and go here. That's what we mean by routes, and that's what I talked about here. Okay, so they allow you to do that. You are able to decide your architecture. So this is something I'll still come back to talk about more. But there are two basically philosophies when it comes to building your backend. You basically want to talk about either you have microservices or monolithic architecture. In a short term, your microservices means that you have different services basically. Yeah, you can have split around. Okay, so the reason why you would want to have microservices is because you want each service to be very optimized for what it does. And you basically want it to communicate with another service. But the other philosophy is to basically have a single unit. This is what you are building. This is everything that it is doing. Everything is one together as a unit, as a single unit. The project that we are going to be talking about later on, especially the backend to it anyway, is a monolithic service. Everything runs as one. Okay, so it's not really a bad idea. It's not even a bad idea to have a monolithic service. Basically, when you think of microservices, you think of apps that are being say used by giant top companies like that. So I think that's basically where I would even be very comfortable you think of that as well. So without talking so much, let's basically see how to get started into the Node.js environment for the specific reason we want to use it for. Okay, so the first thing you would want to do is to install Node.js on your computer. So I've done this a while ago. I can't really be so sure of the environment of the instruction anyway. I wanted to basically have a clean installation for you guys, but I got so busy with things I was doing, so I couldn't find the time. But basically, you could just search up on Google Node.js or Node.js install. I could just ask how to install Node.js. I believe it's pretty much straightforward. You come to the website, and then you have different options: the package manager, the preview installer, and whatever. I believe the fastest or the easiest way is to just come here and download the preview installer. And you probably want to pick the long time support version. You select your operating system and your architecture for your CPU. Okay, and then you download it and install. Okay, so that's pretty much covers how your Node.js installation would go. There will be of course, some questions, the installation wizard basically ask you some certain questions, but I believe the default options should basically be good enough. I can't come up with any examples off the top of my head right now. Okay, so this npm now is basically think of it as a package installer. Say we need different things that are built on Node.js. When you need to install anything, you basically just use npm. Okay, so think of it like you need, let's say for example, we need to install Express, which we will shortly now. So you can just say npm install. Let's just search that now. So npm install basically is the command for installing a package. Okay, you can think of package as libraries that are built on Node.js. Okay, so let's just have that as a definition that we work together with. Okay, so that's the idea now. We will be working with several ones as the time goes on. But where I want us to basically start this thing is to start a simple server. Okay, we can basically have a simple server working without even having to install any what's it called, any library or whatever for that. Okay, we can just write a simple server using the knowledge of Node.js alone, and that's what the code is doing here. Okay, so this particular function, okay, create server from the built-in Node HTTP. Okay, so that's it's built with Node. Okay, so you import it and then you create your server. So like I always say, like I said earlier on, your server is basically a communication between the requests and the response. You care about the request and the response. The request is what you are telling, what you are sending as a user. For example, when I refresh this page or when I get into this page, I have sent a request to the server and the server will give me back a response. Okay, so that is how it is. So this command that says res.write head, we are basically telling it to write something into the header and then it should make content a particular way and do things in a particular way. We are basically going to do all of this. We are going to do this together just shortly. Okay, so basically let's start with that basically. So I think we don't need this anymore. Let's come here. So basically let's call this a new folder. So you find it in the GitHub repository. So let me just call it a simple server. Okay, so that's what we have there. Let's just call it let's just call it simple.js. Okay, so one of the, before I go on, so one of the what's it called, one of the my major workflow for working with, for building these things is to basically use TypeScript. Okay, so if you are not familiar, TypeScript makes you write JavaScript code in a type-safe way. Type-safe means that sometimes your JavaScript code does some certain things that because it wants to guess or it wants to convert one type to other. When we say type, we mean like the type of the variable. For example, when you say what's it called? When you declare a variable and say let's okay, so in case you're not so familiar, when you are declaring variable in JavaScript, we use let or we use var and we use const. Okay, so this let is basically like that you are basically just saying that okay, let something be another thing. You are declaring the variable. So let's say hi equals let's n equals, so let's say hello, for example. Okay, so in this case, the code, this JavaScript has basically inferred that n is a string. Okay, because hello is the distinct. So that's when I say type now, or you could see what this is saying that is string is basically saying it there up there on this code section, saying that, but don't worry, that's not what we are talking about. But I'm basically just giving you the heads up that that's basically how my code is usually structured. And when I want to say that, I'll just write it something as simple.ts. Okay, so let's follow the instruction they said over there to write up a simple server. It's been a while I did this, so I'm not so sure how. Okay. Like this is basically my code from there. Maybe we should follow this. So the first thing you want to do is to do this. So I want to say const http equals require HTTP. Okay, so you're basically telling it that you are requiring that module. Okay, so that begs the question, what is the difference between these two pieces of code? In this case, my code here says require, and their code says that you should import. So the idea there comes from the way JavaScript is bundled. Okay, so we have different should I say kinds basically now of JavaScript. We have JavaScript, we have what we call the common JS, and we have the is it ES module. It's not really, I'm not too very, I think I'm mixing it up somehow, but it's not really where we want to, what we really want to dwell on anyway. But the basic idea is that we have two ways of importing modules in JavaScript. Okay, so this is a way of importing it, which says require. So, and the other way of it is to say imports. And what does import do? You can import it in two ways. You can, if it is a we have two ways of exporting basically. Basically, depending on how your function is defined. Let's say we say export const, or let's say simple function. Don't worry, I will explain what all of this means basically. So let's say we say export const simple function, and then we just call it a simple function. This is how to define a function in JavaScript. Okay, so this is a way of exporting the function if you define it like this. Okay, so if you want to import this function anyway, you write something like this: import dash, you put it in these curly braces and say simple function, and call it from wherever you took it from. Okay, so that is that. But the other way of doing so is to just write and say you can define your function const simple function and say that you want to export defaults, the simple function. Okay, so what it means is that when you do this export default simple function, it means that you import it just by name without the curly braces. You can just say simple function from wherever you took it from. Okay, but in any case, that's not what we are dealing with here. Okay, so we only just want to just write it as, we just want to care about this require. In any case, dealing with how to import your file is this kind of JavaScript technicality that we are basically not dealing too much with in this. It's not the scope of this class basically. Okay, so I'll teach you how to, we will work with both ways anyway, so you get used to the idea. So let me see what we just did one by one. Okay, so this is what you do. So this is what we want to do now. So everything we need to create basically now is in the JavaScript, is required in the HTTP module which we are importing. Okay, so basically we told it that require HTTP. So whenever you write your backend code, you really want to have a port. So a port is basically where your backend is coming, where your application is running from. Okay, so for example, on your local machine, it will be running on different ports. You could set your port to any value basically. So we could say const ports equals 3000. Okay, so this basically says that, oh, when this backend is basically going to make use of this 3000 as where it will be running from. It's basically part of the identifier, the address for it. Okay, so the reason why we say const here anyway, it means that these values are basically regarded as constants. We cannot reassign these ports anywhere else in my code. For example, if I say port equals 5000 here, basically now I should be getting some error because I don't know why that is not going on here. But basically, because I've set it to be a const, is not supposed to be able to reassign it. Okay, so but again, JavaScript technicality. Let's just focus on the idea of backend that we are saying. So the next thing you want to do is to create your server. Okay, so you say const server equals. So when you say your const server, you want to use your function from the HTTP module, which you said that this particular code is going to need. So we say HTTP dot create server. Okay, so when it takes, say this, it should create the server, you basically have that. Okay, so that is a function that we are going to have. So it's going to take this HTTP dot create server is going to take its own function. Okay, and its own function is, it could take and the function has to basically have to be of this type. That's to have a what, the request and the response. So we mostly do so, and by saying it, is that we type the request REQ, then we also write the response by saying RES. So we've created a function and we've passed two parameters into it, which is request and response. And then we do what? We open the function so that we can define the body. Okay, so that's basically how to define to create the server. HTTP does create server, then we pass in a function to it. Okay, so we could now even say that, oh, the server should listen. Okay, so listen basically says that, oh, Now start listening for anything that is going to happen, any connection that is going to happen from the particular port that we've created. So basically, when we say you should start listening at a port, so it's basically making use of that 3000 which we said earlier, and it's going to for anything that goes on from there. Okay, so for example, let's you can see from what the function is telling you, it's basically telling you that, okay, you know what, when we say dot listen, the first thing you want to do is probably pass a port, and the port should be a number. Okay, then at the end of the day, you should put a host name, a backlog. We're not going to put those ones, but the listening listener here is basically kind of like a way for you to just output something that's it's more like a callback function. So a callback function in JavaScript is a function that you want to run inside of another function. So basically, this is what we are doing here. We're creating in another function inside. So the function does not need any parameter, basically. We can just basically set it like this and say that it should write something out. It should print out something like this. So console.log, you should say that, okay, you know what, server started listening at, okay, so this is what I just did now. Okay, so I basically want to print something out. There are three ways we can write this your strings in JavaScript. We could use these single quotes, we could use a double quotes. But let's say you want to print something and you want to print a variable along with it. You use this your, I don't know, I think they call it backticks. Okay, so that is the one you will use. It's usually the one at the close to the figure one button here and the on top of tab key. Okay, so that's the one you basically use because I want to print a variable with it, right? I want to print something that is a variable with it like that. So that's what I want to just do. So I can say something like server started listening on, let's say, HTTP, that's the protocol, and put your column and say local host, referring to your machine. Then you put your column. Then I want to specify the port. So basically, I want you to say HTTP dash local column dash column 3000. But I don't want to add code this 3000 here for myself in case I decide that I don't want to use 3000. I only want to change it in one single place. So I can decide to put this as to pass that 3000 from the variable in JavaScript, you use the $sign and use your curly braces. Okay, so you can write ports. So basically the value of ports will basically come over here. Okay, so when you do that, you save your code and then you can run it. Okay, so basically it says what server started listening on localhost this. So when I click on it now by saying this follow link, I mean nothing is going to happen because all I just did was create the function. I didn't tell it to do anything. It's just going to load indefinitely. So in case you are confused though, I am using a particular extension here to run my code here. Okay, through Visual Studio Code. Okay, so if you want to run your code from your terminal, and I also use an external terminal, it's basically my workflow. Okay, I think you can just say node. Basically, let's see the files that are there. Okay, I think we are not in the right directory. Okay, so we can change it to the simple server. So I'm just basically getting to there. So let me see what is there. Okay, that's the simple.js. I can say node simple.js. I think that should do the same thing there. Okay, so you basically want to do that as well. So some of you may be very familiar with, so it does the same thing, right? That we basically did. So when you go through the function, so some of you may be very familiar with writing using the, what's it called, VS Code terminal. You're basically free to do so. I'm not very, I don't really use the VS Code terminal. Okay, so it's just my own workflow basically. But let's get in whatever you decide to use. we need to write the server to do something. We need to tell the server to do something, okay? So the first thing is that you want it to write maybe like something as part of the header, okay? When you understand this header, it's basically telling it how you want it to structure what you're writing, okay? What the response is going to be, the response type. But this is not really, don't worry too much about it. It's something that we'll come back to talk about even more. But basically, you may want to say res.write head. You basically just want to say res.write head. So when you do this, you attend that the response should write a head. And then you have what is called here from the first thing, status code. So this status code is basically part of your HTTP response code. We have several of those. Okay, so in this case that we are still going to talk about it very, very well. We are going to talk about it and we are going to be using it in practice as well. But the status code we are talking about here, because things, we are just basically saying, oh, okay, once the server starts, let's just say that things are running okay. So you basically probably just want to say 200. So 200 is a way of saying in JavaScript that, in backend that things are okay. Okay. So the other thing we just want to do is that we want to pass it an object into this response.writeHead. And the object will basically just so that it can structure the type of content that we are looking for. Okay. So basically you can just say, okay, content type. Content hyphen type. Okay, and then we should say we have text slash plain. Okay, so that's that. So we've set it that whatever we pass it as a text, we should write it as a plain text. So you can now say res.send. So res.send means that the response should send this. Okay, res.end. So at the end of the day, it should basically write this out. Okay, so it's what hello world. Okay, so once we do that, we are telling our server to basically do something. Okay, so now that we are doing something, once we run it, we wouldn't get that that stuff we got again. So let me restart the server and say node simple.js. So once I do that and I go there now, you can see it basically wrote a simple clean string for us, hello world. Okay, so that's about that. But I also want to prematurely introduce us to a tool. Okay, when I say prematurely, I'm talking about that based on the curriculum, I was supposed to introduce it at the other time of the class when we talk about some certain things. Okay, so that's API testing with Postman. But to introduce it, this is Postman on my own computer here. So once I create a new request, basically now, let me just say we are basically like giving it a new request. A request is basically what you want, basically, okay? What you are sending to the server is what the request is. So you can just say, come here to any of your defined collection. So collection is basically like, you can think of it as your what's it called, as a single app, depending on how you structure it. It's basically like a collection of items. Okay, so you may even have it to be for, say, different apps but doing different particular things. So let me see, I think the one I used, the one that for the project that we talked about here, for this particular purpose, I think, let me just show you how it basically looks on the back end side of things. I think I called it, but this is it here. So this is the one I used here. Okay, so this is a single collection. The name, it's a terrible name, but this is basically what it looks like at the end of the day. So there are different things we talk about to basically learn how to do our own case when we get there. But this is the one I want us to talk about here. Okay, so you basically come here and you add your request. So for now, this place is telling you to give it a name. Basically, we can just call it simple server. So the reason why I said I am prematurely talking about this Postman is because it wants you to basically tell your HTTP method. Okay, when we say HTTP method now, It is basically an action, okay, a verb saying something. Okay, since we are doing it, let's just get it out. Let's still understand it basically now. Okay, so when we say HTTP method, we are talking about an action we want the request to carry out. Okay, so sometimes now, these are the options that we have. These are the HTTP methods. So we have the popular ones that you mostly see all the time is get, post, put, patch, delete. Okay, you see these ones, they are the more popular ones. Okay, so when we say get, now, we are saying like a get request. So get, basically from what you know about it, it means that we go and get something. So you are requesting from something from the server itself. Okay, so the next one is a post request. So post means that you are sending something in particular to the server to basically like maybe like process. Say for example, you have a form, okay, a form online that you've posted your information. Your name is this, your day is this, like that. Let me just use this example as a case study now. Okay, so we want to log in on the service now. Okay, so when you put your email and your password and you press this sign in button, basically what you are doing is that you are sending a post request to the service because you are telling the service to go and do something. Okay, so it's an HTTP method. The next one is that I want to talk about together is put and patch. Basically, you care about them when you are doing any update to the service. There's a technicality behind which one to use. I don't want to get into it now. And there's this one that you care about, delete. Delete is basically, I mean, like it says, to delete something. Okay. So these head and options, we'll get into it later on as well. So the one that your server just did, that your browser just did now, okay, is basically that it sends a get request to the server. Okay, it's basically just sends a get request to the server. And let's see how it works if we write it on Postman. Basically, you type in your address, HTTP, then you go like this, local hosts, then put 3000. Okay, so then you press the send button. So as far as your server is running, Postman knows a way to basically go to this thing. Once you've installed Postman, we will get to how to install Postman as well. Okay, so you basically come here, you write in your address and you press the send button. So it sends it and brings out hello world. But if you look into it now, what we are having from the response. So basically, at this top here, whatever you do at the top here, that my mouse is hovering about on, is your request. It's part of what your request is. There are the parameters you pass to the URL. There are some authorization things you care about, which we will do eventually. And there are some headers. Those things that we were sending that are going to be part of your request will come as part of your headers, your body, what you are sending along with the request, and some basic other things like script and settings. You basically don't want to care about this one as a beginner though. So all of this up here is your request. It's part of what you are sending to the server. So your response is basically what is here in this particular case. Okay, so what you got back is the output from there. But this is also very good because using Postman is very good because you get more information that you would easily see from your browser. To see those things from the browser, you need to get into your developer tools. Okay, and some people don't know how to make use of that. Okay, so but these are the things that you have here. You can see the 200 OK, which is the status code. Okay, so the status code is basically telling you that, oh, this thing is okay. Told you the figure 200 and the name for it, which is okay. Then we also have the response time, 3 milliseconds, and the amount of data sent. Okay, that's 168 bytes for the response. You can save it if you want, and you can even copy it if you want, basically. Okay, so what we just did here is that we used pure Node.js to create a server. Okay, so we didn't install anything. We basically use the environments where are given to us, and then we basically created a server, the runtime, basically. Okay, so in order to create a server, you require the module. Okay, I don't even know if it is I don't know if I'm using the right terminology here. Okay, so you set your ports and then you create the server and then you listen to it. Okay, so basically it requires some requirements. You listen to, you create your server and then you listen to it. Okay, so that's basically the steps to creating a simple server. All right, so I hope I'm with you guys and to follow. I think at this point I'll need a little bit of a what's it called? An audio feedback.
I'm following you, sir.
Okay. So I hope we are all still together, still going playing. Okay. So but basically once you come to the repository, let me push it now before I forget that. So Git add everything. I hope we know how to make use of GitHub as well. And you can do all of this with basically from your Visual Studio Code as well. Because I just have this habit of, so I think my friend said stressing myself basically, but you could easily just come over here and then use the extension and do the same thing I just did by coming over here and then committing it. Maybe the next commit will do something like that. So basically you'll find this simple.js over there as well. Okay, so but that's not the basics of what we want to do. What we want to do is that we want to write full-on code, okay, that could become something like a real platform, like probably something like this. Okay, this is still the front end to it, basically. Okay, so this is the front end to it, but we want to write something that could become something like this. I think I was reading through Paystack developer page to that because I wanted to do something with it, something that could become this. Some of the things we are saying, this is how it is for a bigger platform now. You could see all these things I'm saying now. You could see them all coming together. This is for Paystack, okay? So I was reading some things relating to them. So those things that look complex at the end of the day, they all lie on the same simple tools that we are now talking about, basically, okay? So let me go back to where I talked about this thing. So the first thing we just did here was to explain what Node.js is and to write about a simple server. Okay, I didn't structure my PowerPoints together, but basically, let me just cross this over so I will know that I've talked about it. How do we do so here again? Okay, I think it's format, text, and strike through. Okay, Alt-Shift 5. I keep forgetting. Okay, so the next thing to now focus on about now is Express.js. So Express.js is the reason why I love Express.js. Let me start from here now. Is that I like the fact that it is kind of unopinionated. Okay, when I say unopinionated, it basically allows you to carry out some certain doesn't really want a lot of baggage, right? It doesn't really want you to have so much going on, so much to worry about. It allows you to play with a lot of different tools as far as they are in JavaScript anyway. So that's how JavaScript and Express.js, that's the philosophy behind it. If we Google Express.js now, it will tell you, they will tell you something about fast, minimal, and let me see. It's a Node.js web framework for building RESTful APIs. Okay, we'll talk about RESTful very well soon enough. Okay, I think what we just did was talk about it briefly last week. Well, we will talk about it, I think maybe next class on Thursday. But when we say Express.js now, it is, where's where they wrote, they wrote it, oh yeah, this is it. They said fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js. Okay, so it is fast, unopinionated, and minimalist. So all these are adjectives that you are just, oh, it's more like an advertising blog at this point. Okay, but there are things that you basically when you come back to it, when you become kind of like an expert at it now, okay? Or when you know how to write this thing, when you pick different tools, you kind of really get what they are saying. So the idea is that it's kind of that, but these are the philosophy behind it. The unopinionated means that you can do things the way you want it. The library, the framework is not really going to get in your way, okay? So it is built on top of Node.js. Like I said, Node.js is basically the runtime, the environment, how things are basically done. And you can basically use your to create a simple server, but really it's not really what you are going to be doing. Okay, that's not really what you want to be going to be doing. So what you want to do here is basically that you want to install Express.js. So to install Express.js, you come to your terminal, you write npm install express. Okay, so when I gave this save flag, if I remember clearly well, it means you should okay, why am I forgetting that simple thing? Does save so it's to install it to include it in the. So basically, yeah, I knew that I basically don't do so. Basically, so we don't really need that save flag there. But basically, this is what you just want to do. You want to install Express, npm install Express. Okay. So when you run it now, it starts building up some things. It will add some files to your repository. I think it will add 2 files. Okay, so the first one is package.json, and the other one is your package log.json, and also had a new entire folder called node modules. So this is where it's let me talk about it one by one. So you see this package.json is basically, think of it as a basically where your requirements are. Okay, so in fact, this basically happens whenever you install any node package. Okay, any package that is built on top of Node, it will update your package.json. The reason why we didn't have that earlier on is because we didn't install anything. We basically just created a simple server and then we ran it. Okay, so but now we've installed Express.js, so we already have that going on with it. Okay, so package.json is here. So in the package log.json, you basically kind of don't want to come here for any reason at all. You probably don't want to come here at all. So just let things be, okay? So just leave this file as well. But the other file you need to worry about is this node modules. And the reason why this node modules is important is that when you're pushing to your GitHub, you basically don't want to push your node modules along your code. Okay, there's just so many files that are there that is basically going to take so much time. And basically, it's basically a way that screams noob. And like someone is a novice if you are pushing your node modules. The reason is because when you take someone else's code, say like I advised, you search GitHub, you find some repositories that this thing. Let me show you where our capstone project lies in anyway. So where is it again? Hold on. Let's come here. Hopefully the network doesn't this thing. Where am I? So this is this thing here. This is the project here. Okay, and you can see like I said, TypeScript is basically how I do my work. So the idea is that when you take someone else's code or you want to work on a team with someone, you don't want to have the node modules as part of what you are grabbing from there or what is going to be on their GitHub anyway. So because you are still going to have this, what they call the package.json. The package.json lists all the dependencies for the particular projects. Okay, so for example, in this code, I relied on Axios, Bcrypt, cores.env, and so on, like that. So you basically have all of that, and you can easily install everything. Okay, so and the command to install when you have it is just once you have your this thing, you can just do npm install. It will basically do that. as well. So maybe let me create a new folder here as part of our simple server. It's something we'll basically like delete again so that we can see it in action. Let me just call it Karuna demo. Okay, so let me switch to the repository, this thing here. Okay, ls to list the files in our directory and switch it to Karuna demo. Okay, so now that we are in this thing, I can basically clone the repository there. Okay, so let me copy the link and then clone it there in git clone that. So it will basically create a new folder called the project Karuna and then do all of that. Okay, so it's happening in seconds there. So now that I've cloned it there, when I open this thing here, I have everything that I did over there in Karuna there. Okay, so remember, if I want to install it as part of my project, I can basically now do npm install. So when I do npm install, okay, let me see what happened. Oh, sorry, I wasn't in the right place. Okay, so cd Karuna. Okay, so I think I'm in the right place now. So I can now say npm install. When I do npm install, it goes into the package.json file, download what it knows from the from the dependencies that is in the package.json file, and we are good to go. Okay, so I don't know why this is taking more time than it's supposed to, but okay. Okay, so we have some things happening here. Okay, it's basically not our business anyway. So let me delete it off because we just needed it to show you npm install in action. So let me delete it from there. Okay, yeah, delete permanently. Okay, sorry, let me leave it from here as well because the terminal is still opening it. Sorry. Okay, so let me try and get it off. All right, so it's gone now. So like I was saying now though, so basically you start your new project and you install Express. Okay, so how do you ensure that you don't mistakenly push your node modules as part of your project? You include a .git ignore file. So .git ignore inside your project listing. I just tell it to ignore the node modules. Okay, so once you save it, I mean, Visual Studio Code will basically kind of give you a way to know that it is working, because once you see it here, that particular thing is grayed out. It is grayed out now, okay? Let you know that, oh, it's not part of what is going to be pushed to your GitHub. So one of the first things you do when you start up a project in Node.js, any Node.js project basically, is that you want to what's it called? You want to remove the node modules from being able to push to your Git repository. Okay, so let's create a new simple.js now. So let me call it the index of my listing. So index.js, showing that that's where the app is going to start from. Okay, so one thing you want to do is that you want to require Express. Okay, so let me get this from here. So let me see if I can still remember this workflow. You want to require Express from there. Okay, so what this is telling you that is it's just like here, when you require the HTTP, we have required it here as well. Okay, so you want to set a port. So you cannot have two projects running off the same port at the same time. It's fine if I want to just do your to use 3001, or I can use 3000 because I know I basically stopped the server of the previous projects. Hold on, I know I basically stopped the server anyway. And how can I confirm? If I come here to my Postman and send the request again, it will basically say could not send the request. That's because the server is not even active at all. So that's what it has from there. So I know that the simple.js that's here, that is making use of simple this thing, is basically not running anything at all. Okay. So this index.js is how we have it to be this thing. So you basically want to create a new file where you define those things. Okay. So you can now say, oh, const express is take that, and then let me see, const application equals to, oh, okay, you know what? Give me a sec. Let me quickly, I need to use the restroom. Let me just give me a sec. I'll be back. Okay. All right. So yeah, I'm back now. Okay. So let's go on now. Okay. So are you guys still with me, or I've lost you guys? Okay, so we want to say that const express equals oh, sorry, you're supposed to say require. That's me. Okay, so one of the reasons I'm making this is because I basically always do imports now, so it's been a while I wrote anything on require, but basically I'll show you guys the same thing. But are you guys with me? Oh, someone sent a message earlier on. Maybe before I go on, since we've taken the break anyway, I'll call me your LinkedIn. It says, please, can you come again on what you use if you don't want to make use of VS Code terminal? Okay. So for me, I make use of what's it called? I've forgotten this package, this thing again. It's a simple command line. Okay. I downloaded it a while ago. I can't even remember. When I downloaded it, or this thing, I think it was last year or so. But let me get back to you on that. Okay, so let me get back to you on that particular package application. But you can run your request fine from Node.js. Sorry, from VS Code. You can run your code very well from VS Code. Okay, so you know what? I will get back to you guys on the next before the next class on that. Okay. Not seeing this next question. Okay, okay. All right, so where are we? All right, const express equals to require express. Okay, so that's a way of saying we are importing express there. Okay, so you basically want to create your listing, your app. Okay, so basically when we say const app equals to express, you can name this variable anything you want. You can even say const server. Okay, anything you want basically. Okay, but most time, most people just say app, okay? So just app, just don't think it, just go with the flow, okay? So the reason why I use port 3000 as well is basically because 3000 is so popular, but you could use any value you want. Basically, you want to use any 4 digits number, you can use 7777, or you could use 6666, or you could use 4242, whatever. But basically, you basically want to use something that basically is fine, okay? And 3000 is fine. There are some ports that may be inaccessible for you to use because maybe where you are deploying it to, say if you are deploying our application, we could deploy it to say Vercel or Render. Like the project I talked to you about, which was deployed, the backend was deployed on Render. Okay, so basically they may be using some certain ports that are just inaccessible to you, but I mean the options are like so much that if you're using some common ones, you probably won't hit some, you won't hit some classes like that. Basically, it's just to change value anyway. So you say const express equals to require express. Const app is to say express, then you set your ports. Okay, so you want to say that your app is listening. So again, similar to what we did without using any library. You could just say app.listen and tell it to listen at a particular port. And then you want to say that, oh, okay, this is the what you want it to see at the end of the day. You should print out console.log and say something about server listening on. Okay, so like I said, you should use the backtick. Okay, if you don't really think you want to put pass a variable to it, you can just write that thing yourself. But basically, this is how I like to do my thing. Server listening on ports. You can say on ports and put your ports. I hope I did that well. Or you could say on HTTP dash localhost. Then put your ports. Okay, that's a weird color that never shows up. There's always showing blue. Maybe something is wrong, but basically that's what you should have. So let's see if we can do the same thing here. So as far as you're in the right place, which I can tell I'm not here. Okay, sorry. See this simple server. So I'm in the right place now. You can still do your same node index.js. So basically start up index.js. I can do this. Okay. So basically you are sending, just like I said, you are sending a GET request to that particular endpoint. Like you said, when you open the browser, like I was explaining when we talked about Express, like from the Postman, okay? So, but it gave you a this thing now. When we started this, it told you cannot get this thing, okay? Cannot get the home endpoint, the first endpoints, okay? And the reason is that we didn't tell it, we did not even define that endpoint, basically. We basically just created the application and we are running it like that, okay? If we do the same thing on Postman and send a request, let me see, what are we using as our port? Is it 3001 or 3000? Okay, 3000, so I can basically just send it like this. Okay, it gives you an HTML page this time around. Okay, this is HTML where it wrote the exact same thing you have there. So you can start to see some differences between what the normal node is doing and what Express is doing. Okay, so this kind of some of things. I just told you the error code 404 not found. So 404 means that is you might have heard error 404. It says that something is not found basically. So those are two HTTP response code. We call them HTTP response code. There is 200, which means okay. That's basically you're good. Then 404, which means not found. We'll be seeing other ones as we go on. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is basically want to define a route. Okay, so app.get. So that get is saying particularly that you are passing a get request. Okay, so that is a get request basically. You can now say, okay, this is where you want it to do. Okay, that's the route you want it to go to. Yes, ordinarily this slash means that basically I'm going to that http.localhost 3000, basically. That if you put this slash there, it does the same thing like that, okay? So you want to you've defined your where you want to go, that's your route. Then you want to put a function to call, okay? And just like in the simple.js, you just basically tell it to take the request and the response there. So you create a function here, request, comma, response, and then you define your function as well and say, okay, in this place, basically, we don't care about setting the headers when it comes to express.js. Express will know what to do for us, or we can just say rest.send. Okay, so that is how we say. We don't say rest.end in Express. We say rest.send, and then we say something like hello world. Okay, so once you do that, you basically want to restart your server. You can do your Control S and okay, and do node index.js again. Okay, so it starts up your server. When you call it now, you basically have that hello world. Okay, so the reason why it gave us a very clean output here is because I think by default now, I told you that Express will try and guess what you are trying to send. Okay, so by default, since you didn't pass it anything, it was trying to send you an HTML page. But now that you passed it a simple string now, hello world, it basically just returned that as it is. Your response code is now okay, 200. Came back in 15 milliseconds, which seemed to take a longer time than when we wrote it with normal, what's it called, the normal Node.js. So some of those things are things you may be paying your attention to, okay? When you run it again, it may not be the same value, but okay, you can see it's 4 milliseconds here. So this is still basically fine territory. Your 238 bytes is the size of your response, okay? As you can see that the headers may form majority of it, while your body is basically just 11 bytes, okay? So, but when you refresh your browser, when you refresh it, you can see the hello world, okay? So that's what you are trying to do here. And you can also make some simple, maybe some slight adjustments here. You can try and say you want to write your HTML, whatever there. I can say this is H1, okay? So once you do so, again, you have to restart your server. I was pressing Ctrl C to break that point and just write node index.js. Okay, so it will start the server again, and when you write it again, it will try and come out as H1. This is basically what I passed in. And then when you run it again, when you refresh it on your server again, you can see, on your browser, see hello world as well. The browser has automatically applied the HTML rule as well. So that's basically how to write a what's it called? A simple server using Express.js, okay? So again, your Express.js is built on the Node.js runtime. This is a runtime environment that lets developers create servers, web apps, command line tools, and scripts, okay? So it allows you to run JavaScript everywhere, not just the browser. A very, very good innovation, okay? So let's come here to what I said. So we've talked about Node.js, we've talked about Express. So there are so many more things to talk about from Node.js as well. But basically, Node.js is not particularly where our this thing is going to be on. We are going to be majorly talking about Express.js because programming is basically all about abstraction upon abstraction. Let me see if I have that. Okay, because I didn't do the right thing there. So think of Express.js as an abstraction on top of on top of your Node.js. So it allows you to build your stuff quickly, and then you have it like that. Alt Shift F5. Okay, I've given up. Why is it not working? Let me just extract through it here as well. Okay, so I think, and also I've also created a simple server as well. Let me strike through that as well. And then let's say we've talked about the methods as well. Basically, I think it will be better if we just talk about the methods and the response code as we go along in the project, so in a better way, okay? So all these things we've talked about, okay? So Node.js, Express.js, the methods, your methods are again your get, post, put, patch, this, whatever. And then your response code are just your values, your 200 and 404 that we have, okay? Those are your response code, okay? And to start up your server, just run that, okay? What else? The next thing to do is to talk about is how to a project. How to structure a project, okay? So, but before we do that now, let me see what will happen. I don't know. What if for a given route, like this, my express code here, okay? I am passing a GET request here to it, and everything seems to work fine, okay? Let me send it one more time because I have not killed the server. The server is still running here, as you can see on my command line. What if I change the HTTP method to maybe say a post request? I want us to maybe like say what will happen. Is it going to work normally, or is it going to give us an error? I want us to just like answer it basically. I know everybody knows the answer, but basically let's everybody talk. Let's say something. Let's try and guess the error code, or if it's going to work normally, or if it's going to this thing. Maybe you can type, or you may want to speak or whatever. Okay. Okay, someone said they didn't get the question. Okay, so let me say it again while we wait for the answer. So you see in the application here, I said that the application to do app.get. This get is specifically saying that do a get request. Okay, so do a get request on this endpoint, on this particular path. Okay, on this particular path. So the question is that if instead of, when I said it to be a get request now, it basically works as normal, still doing what I asked it to do, which is to send rest.send, like hello world. But if I change it from a get request to say a post request, is it going to work normally? And if it doesn't work normally, what kind of error are you kind of expecting this to read? That's the question, okay, for the person that didn't get it. Okay, someone said permission denied will be error. Okay. Emmanuel, can you maybe like use the microphone to say what kind to elaborate on that? What you're trying to say?
What I mean is that we are trying to get something, but we want to we only have permission to get a request, but we cannot send a request. So it's like you're blocking us from sending anything, sending a request. It will be blocking us from sending a request instead of receiving a response.
Okay. All right. So I heard what you said, but okay. So let me help you say what you are trying to say very well, because it's also important that as you are growing in the backend world, you know how to pick your terms and say them correctly. Okay. So what you're trying to say is that I think I heard you saying that the application will block you from sending a request. But if that's what you said, then basically that's kind of not correct, because when you have a server, basically, regardless of what HTTP method you are using, regardless of get, post, put, patch, or regardless of whatever you have defined in your application, you are always sending requests to the database, to the server. Okay, you are always sending requests and you are always getting a response. So that request, what is it doing in particular, is why we have these HTTP verbs, HTTP methods, okay? So your get is more or less trying to say that, oh, you are trying to get something from the server. Basically, you are getting something to the server, you are first of all sending a request to the server, telling it that, Mr. Server, I want to get something from you. If it is a post, you are telling that server, I want to post something to you, put and patch, I want to put and patch something to you, and delete, I want to delete something. Basically, that is what those things are doing. But basically, you are still sending a request and you are getting a response. Okay, so that's the terminology for that. It's just that what type of request are you sending? Is it a get? Is it a post? Is it a put? Is it a patch? Is it a delete? Okay, so I think somebody else answered it and they got the answer correctly. He said it won't work. We don't have a route defined for posting. Should be a 404. And that is in fact, it is a perfectly this thing is a perfectly answered is a perfectly correct answer, basically. So back to what I just did now. If you look at the code one more time, we've sent it to say app.get. Okay, so when we send it again as well, let's send it now. It still tells us the hello world that we have. But if you change that get to a post and send it now, it will give us a 404 not found, because we did not tell it, we did not define any posts in our code, okay, at that end point. At that end point, okay, we didn't tell it to do anything at that end point in terms of posts. But let me help you, and let me just give you one or two things that we may decide to do. Let's say we say app.posts now, for example, and we do the exact same thing that your get is doing. Okay, and I've just copied and pasted this thing. Okay, so even if we say app.posts on that same endpoint, when I say endpoints, I'm talking about the route now. Okay, so even if it is a what's it called now, a post, it will work and do the, okay, what's wrong? What's oh, sorry, I did not redefine the server. Okay, sorry, I'm used to, there's something I'll talk about that before we end the thing. Okay, so basically, if I send it again now, you can see it works and it is doing the exact same thing that the get is supposed to is doing. So what I'm more or less trying to say here is that the stuff that happens at your server is not really in the hands of your gets and posts. Okay, it's not really in the hands of your gets and posts. It's more like, think of it as a convention for what is supposed to happen. Your code is still what is going to happen, and it guides you to tell you, okay, I want this thing to get here and I want you to get and do this. Okay, so the action that is going to happen at the end of the day is in the hands of your function. If you want to make developers really angry, you can put your get requests and put functions that are supposed to do posts and put it as your get request, and things that are supposed to do get and put it in your post request, and still it would work. It is not kind of, there are some things that are it will break for, but kind of in a way it will still work, basically, if you define those things very well. But that's not the, like, don't quote me technically on that. It's okay, but what I'm trying to tell you is that the things that actually eventually happen still mostly lie in the function that you decide to call, not just the fact that you say get and post. This post is supposed to just be more or less an identifier, because you can have multiple things going on at the same endpoint. Basically, this endpoint now, we have get going on there and we have post going on there as well. Okay, it depends on how your project is structured. Okay, so it could be that, say for example, you need a page that will load up a form. maybe say you want the form to load, you could do a GET request for that. And then when you are done with everything you want the form to do, and you want to send it again, you may do a POST request right on that same endpoint. Okay, that may not be the best way to do things, but basically that is just to show you that you could have the same endpoints with different HTTP methods for the actions, GET, POST, or whatever, but still call different functions to them. And you could even decide to be a crazy person and switch up the functions if you want. Okay, don't do that. Basically, don't do that. Okay, but I'm just basically telling you that it's possible. Okay, so this GET that is saying here is basically just telling you that, oh, when a GET sent particular function, it's not really doing that much of I mean, it kind of determines what kind of header is sent anyway, because look at it here now. If you check it from here, when I'm sending a GET request, the number of headers are 6 as well. But when I'm sending a POST request now, Postman is putting 7 headers to it. Basically, it's doing more things than the GET request is supposed to be doing. Okay, so your browsers, everything that we've always worked with, is kind of expecting some certain behavior, some certain things that you want to do. So it just makes sense that to stick together with to those things. Okay, so I hope that is clear to you, everyone. Okay, so that's that. So if you don't define that method, that particular HTTP method, or that particular path, you will get a 404, meaning that it is not available. Okay, so even if I just put, say for example, this is our app, and I put, say, hello here, so I did not define these hello endpoints. So if I send a GET request to that endpoint, I will get a 404 because that place does not exist. Okay, so and again, one thing is that this page and this one, they are basically identical. Okay, so this slash, with or without it, it works. It's basically the same thing. Okay, so that's just that's just kind of there, something you just basically see. Okay, so if the endpoint doesn't exist, you get a 404. It's not found. Okay, because it's not defined in our code. Okay, one more thing is that you could also define your function kind of elsewhere. Okay, this is something that will happen, that will lead us to the next section of the code. Basically, let's say I define a function and call it do something. Okay, and I define it to be a function that takes requests and response. Okay, and I say, take it like this, and say rest.send h1 hello world, and I break it down and say this as well. So I may decide to basically just remove this line. Okay, let me just I may decide to remove this line from here so that I have something that's very well kind of neatly structured like that, and just say do something. Okay, so the function that I wrote here earlier on, okay, is now being what is here as do something. So if I save it and restart my server as well, okay, by Control-C to break to stop the server and do node index.js, it will basically do what it basically work as identical. So that should give me 404 because the path is not the same. That path is not defined, but if I send it from there, which is where my home point is, it does the same thing. Okay, so you basically kind of want to have a way of doing things in this particular kind of way. Okay, so let me leave it in the first way that we define things, and let me see, res. Okay, so another question you may have is that what if you don't put your rec and res in your function? Basically, what if you don't put it? What's going to happen? Okay, so let's see what's going to happen basically. Okay, so let's imagine that we just remove your, first of all, we can't even do without the res because it's part of the res.send. So unless we want to have something is not defined, we basically will need that here. So you will see that from here. Okay, I'm not even getting any red line here. I don't know what is up with the environment, but things that are supposed to show me errors are not giving me errors. I'll check into it very well soon. Okay, so but let's imagine if I remove the request basically and I start the server again, node index.js, and I send it as well. So of course, things are basically did not work. And why is that so? Because your express function is basically kind of expecting a request response. So basically like it plugs some things into the request and then pushes it back as a response. So even if we are not using the request and whatever, it's basically is kind of expecting some certain things. That's how the request handler is being done. There's one that is optional, and that is next. But basically, if you see what's it called now? Basically want to do your request and rec and res. So basically it's telling that this is the first one is a request and the next one is a response. And as far as this thing goes, you can also try and be like a crazy person one more time, okay, to switch things as well. And let's say node index.js. Sorry. Okay, so then if I run it one more time now, it works. You may try and be like a mad person and just say this is res and this is rec. Okay, so as it is here, an error should form. Okay, let me show you now. We should have an error. Well, and the error may not be exactly what you are thinking about. So basically, if you run it again, you get an error. And the reason is because it's not because of the name. Okay, it's not because of the way the name is. It's because you are telling it to use the first object, which it thinks it's a request, which the function is expecting to be a request, but you called it a res. Okay, you are using that request to do a send. You are sending from the request. Meanwhile, you're supposed to send from the response, regardless of what you called it. So the correct proper thing from here, since we are crazy, is to do a rec.send. And if you do that, regardless of what you name your stuff, programming is just about this thing now. It will work now, despite the fact that the names have been swapped. Okay, so it's just the the positional things for what it is expecting. But yeah, again, don't do that. Okay, so basically just do res and then rec. Okay, and do res. Okay, so I don't know if I'm supposed to use languages like I just did in this program since it is recorded, but yeah, it's fine. Okay, so so that's basically kind of about it, and you can tweak things around, do things around to your code. Okay, so of course once you really get what it is doing, then things should work. Okay, so that's what it is doing. So one more thing we have that I should talk about before I move on to this section about structuring your code well is that do you really want to be doing a node index.js all the time? No, the answer is no. You basically want to have a way that your code knows how to automatically automatically know how to detect that your file has changed and then do the update to your server, to your server that is running. Okay, you want anything that changes basically automatically happening. Okay, and how do we do that? By installing a library called nodemon. npm install nodemon, nodemon. But you will see people tell you to put it as a developer dependency. Okay, and that's because this nodemon is not needed in a production environment. It's basically a tool you are using when you are working with your code. You want it to automatically restart your server once changes are being detected. Okay, so you don't want it to be, you want to basically leave a flag so that it treats it as a developer dependency. And when I say developer dependency, is come here to package.json and add it over there. Okay, so that's what you want to do from there. So basically, let's do that from what we have. npm install nodemon, and when you press this thing, it will. Oh, okay. I think I basically did not even put the flag. Okay, so it's added it as a normal dependency, but let's uninstall it from there. So npm uninstall nodemon, so I can do the proper thing. So npm install nodemon, but it should be a dev dependency. So when we check our package.json file, is in the right place now. So that's that, okay? So, but doing this nodemon is basically, you may think, oh yeah, I've installed nodemon, I'm good to go for my server. But you would be wrong, because the tool is there, but you've not told it how to use this thing, okay? You don't want to, you've not basically told it how the nodemon should automatically restart your server. And how are you going to do that? By coming to that same package.json file, you create a new place called scripts, okay? You create scripts and you tell it that, okay, say you want to say stats, okay? This is kind of the popular way of doing it, and you want it to say nodemon, and you want it to call the name of the file that you want it to restart, and that is index.js. Okay, so index.js is just basically it. And as you can see, it says run by the term npm start command. Okay, so when you put it there in your terminal, npm starts, it will run nodemon index.js, just like we said. Okay, nodemon index.js, and we are good to go. Does the right thing as well. Okay, so that's what happens from there. Okay, so your server is there and it automatically works whenever you have any change. So if I change it from here and do something here, for example, okay, so once I hit Ctrl S, come to your terminal and see it has already restarted due to changes, and it is starting it and it is already running the local disk. So nodemon is quite important to you too. Okay, so you don't do node this the entire time. You can do Ctrl C to stop your terminal, stop the entire thing, and do npm start, and you're good to go. Okay, that's how that works. Okay, so let's revert to things being easy again as well. Okay, so in order to end today's class, because it has been almost 2 hours, okay, I didn't know we would be going this deeply or whatever, despite I was not very prepared for it. I want us to see how we can structure a project. Okay, how do we structure projects into in a way that we this thing? And for us to do that, let me return back to what we become our what's it called, our capstone projects. Okay, so let me come here to this backend. Okay, so basically this way I define this thing. Okay, we are going to do it together anyway. So when you come here, you have your roots for your roots, what they call it, your root folder. Okay, this is everything that is going on there. Okay, so this is where you basically want to have your index file here. I don't know why it isn't here. Okay, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Things are going on here that is weird, but it's been I don't know what I did wrong here, but this is how it is anyway. So your index file is here. Okay, so that's where you want to have some different things here. So many of the things I said in this call is different from the way the code is structured, because I was using require here. Meanwhile, my code is doing imports, and I'm also using TypeScript here. If you notice the file extension from there, but basically this, you don't really need to do your things the way I did them yet for a get-go beginning. Okay, but this is the way this is what I was basically thinking. Okay, so let's think of all these folders one by one. Basically, I'm a kind of person that I don't want you to think of structuring your code base as a list of things you need to do. or you to structure your code base when you are starting your code, or as a beginner, you need to structure your project. I'm a kind of person, I have this philosophy that when you need a particular thing, you do it. So it doesn't become a something for you to think about. This moment that, oh, it is about time you needed it. So you basically do it. Okay. So my project, I don't have these things in my head that, oh, I want to start a project. So config, controller, middleware. No, 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 no. I don't do that. Basically, I don't even use what's it called? I think a boilerplate tool. Okay, because I kind of want to have my things being set up in my own way. Yeah? And that's the beauty of Express.js. Okay, so there are boilerplate tools. Basically, it's basically like you write a command on your terminal and it builds up the projects. Okay, using some certain basically all these things that are being shown. Hello, can you guys hear me again now and can see my screen? Hello. I think I will need a response because my
Yeah, we
Yeah,
can
we
hear
are,
network
you.
we are, we
just.
are here.
All right, yeah, my network glitched out. Okay. So yeah, so as I was saying, so I don't know if it makes you look like someone that is a newbie or whatever. It doesn't really matter anyway. So tools are just meant to help you, but if you want to do things yourself, that's just fine. Okay, so personally, I prefer to do things my own self and just put it like that because I don't want those folders there when I don't need it. So, but then, yeah, let me just tell you the general philosophy here. Okay, so this first one, which you see as config now. Okay, so this is basically where you want to tell some configuration tools, basically how you want to set up your database, how you want to what's it called, to show your basically how your secret variables, your env files, okay, how you want them to your application to basically receive them and whatever. You basically come here to config and you do that. Okay, I'm sure you are very familiar with configuration basically. Then the next one you may not be so familiar with is your controller. Okay, your controller is where you implement your business logic. Let me come back here to the first class we had. Let me see if sorry, you'll be seeing some of my personal folders. Should have it easily this thing here, okay? That has probably become part of the recording, but it's fine. Okay, so here at this point, I said something about implementing business logic, the business logic. Okay, so you want your business logic to implement them in the controllers. Okay, so that's where your business logic is. So basically, any action that you want carried about. So basically, you want a user to be logged, you want to register a user, you want to verify a user, you want to log in a user. They will all be done in your controllers. So something like this function now that we did in our own case, which is this do something. Okay, it's a good function to stay in the controller. Okay, because it does something, or some people may call it handlers. Well, I think where I started learning it from, we call it controller. So I'm good to, I'm basically fine with that, basically. So the next one is middleware. Okay, so middleware is basically just like the name says, middleware. You want this thing to basically you want this it's basically like serves in between your requests. How would I even put this well in a way? Say, for example, now you want your action to be carried out, like this, do something, okay? Like this, when you set app.get something, okay? It is going to use this endpoint. Basically, this is where the action you want the function to be doing. But let's say you want to run some certain things in between, along the way. That is where a middleware will come in place. Okay, so middleware is very familiar when you're talking about backend stuff. We use middleware, for example, if we want to check that someone that is sending the request is logged in. Okay, so let's say, for example, now you want to, let's say in our projects now, okay, let me be very, very specific to what the capstone projects may be. You want to basically have a way that someone will be able to request for a right, okay? You want to create a right. I mean, that's what the business is all about. It is a business for getting right. So basically, you don't want anybody to just be calling on this your endpoint that you want this particular person to create a right. You basically want to have a way to check that that particular person is logged in. Okay, so due to the philosophies of REST, which is how we'll start the class next week, you kind of have to pass that information along with your requests. And that's what we use the middleware for. Okay, so that's what the middleware does. Think of it as basically do this thing along the way before an action is carried out. Okay, so your models is where you have your database information. Okay, your models is you define your database schemas. So basically, you want your schema to, for example, this is my user schema, my authentication schema. I want the first name, the last name, the password, email, phone number, agenda, some different things that basically are supposed to be there to still be there. Okay, so those are part of the things that are under your schemas, and you define them in your models. Make referring to your database itself. So you also have your routes. Okay, so this your route is basically where your application is going. They're going to the authentication routes, your distinct routes. You basically want to pass it very, very well like this. Okay, then you have services too. So basically, you may put services for things that you want this thing to run maybe like later on, or I don't really use services all that often, but I mean, when something is a service, you basically kind of like get a good idea for it. It's something we'll come back to anyway. So you also have utils. So basically, you may have helper functions. You want this thing to just basically do one thing and get back, but you don't really want it to be part of your controller code. Basically, your controller code may be calling on them. Okay, but you don't really want your controller code to be so long, but maybe like a single function that, oh, just do this thing and do this thing. You basically want to define it in your utils. So basically, you may call it helpers if you want, but from where I learned this for the first time, we said utils, and it basically works anyway. So the other thing you have is validators. So those requests that are coming into your database, or before you put things in your database or they are coming to your server, you basically want to be sure that those things they fit into the way your database wants. Okay, sometimes depending on what type of database you use, those things may not be strictly checked by the database itself, especially if you're using something like MongoDB, which is what we'll be using in our curriculum anyway. So those things are not strictly checked by the database. So you basically kind of want your validators to, to just be there to ensure that things are neat, things are making sense, things are doing as expected as they are. If they are not, then an error is thrown. Okay, so you basically want those things going on in your code. So like I said, these things are things that I want you to be familiar with it as a whole, but I don't want you to think about it later on. Okay, I don't want you to think about it now. I want you to think about it later on. Basically, when we are working a full proper project, we think about it when we get to it. Okay, so don't think of doing a project and then creating folders upon folders here and there. Okay, think of it that you are creating a folder. Then when your mental logic carries you that, oh, you need a controller, then create a folder controller. I want to create my database. Your mental logic tells you that go and create your models. Okay, so that's how you kind of want to start your backend development journey. So last class and this class has kind of been full of talking and getting you to really understand things. But basically, that's how things are really going to start with, okay? We are still going to be taking a lot of code samples. We're going to be building a lot of things, okay? But in the general view of what the curriculum is basically talking about, we've basically introduced you to Node and Express. You've seen some kind of HTTP methods and some response code, and you're basically seeing how to start up a simple server, whether you want to make use of the Node.js without using any library, or you basically want to do it with Express.js, okay? And you might also want to do much more complex things without using any framework at all. You can make use of you can create a simple tool, okay? So for example, if you come to this my simple cruise that I did here now, this I wrote it, I wanted to challenge myself, not even in JavaScript work, okay? So it was in Go, and then that's Golang, and then it was basically done without using any what's it called, without any framework, okay, without any framework. It's just basically the default library. Maybe before the next class I will do the same thing in using simple Node, okay? So I may do the same thing and just pass it on to you guys as well, so you may want to write much more complex functions. But basically, as far as we're thinking of an application or whatever, we are basically still going to use Express as far as this session is concerned. Okay, so now that the time is almost over, I think I'm basically satisfied with the things we've been able to learn for today, and we have another class on Thursday where we start talking about routing and databases and stuff like that as well. So it's going to be a lot because we only have 8 weeks to get you started. But yeah, I think we'll be good. I think it's fine. So I think that's all for now. I'm very terrible at ending classes like that. So, but I hope we've all been able to learn one or two things, very importantly. Okay, so if you have any questions or any feedback or anything you just like to share, maybe you know one thing per se, or I made a mistake somewhere, or I'm supposed to do something, you may just let's spend like 5 minutes to just to say one or two things. Okay. Uh,
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So I want to do a question. The structure you showed us now, they were majorly around the TypeScript.
I'm listening.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now. It was breaking.
Okay, so I said the structure you showed us now, it was majorly around TypeScript and all of that. So are we also going to be using the same structure for Express 2, where we have the controllers, the middlewares, the models, and everything?
Okay, so like I said earlier, I think I said that I want us to use the right terminologies. So when I say TypeScript, TypeScript is a programming language. Think of it as a superset of JavaScript. So TypeScript and JavaScript are kind of, think of it as part of the same things, okay? So the reality is that when we say TypeScript anyway, you basically use TypeScript when you care about the types, like the data types of what you have, okay? And you really want it to match some certain behaviors. You want some things to be basically correct, okay? So that's when you really care about TypeScript, okay? But for now, we are just basically building simple toy projects and whatever. So I don't think that is what we need to bother about yet. And also, majority of us are not very familiar like very experienced with JavaScript, so I don't think it's worth going deeply into TypeScript for the moment. But basically, to answer your question anyway, your JavaScript, TypeScript, whatever, we are following the same kind of structure, okay? Your code is majority of the times going to be around the same thing. Almost everything that is done in TypeScript can be done in JavaScript anyway. Your TypeScript code at the end of the day, it transpiles to JavaScript at the end of the day anyway. So there's that. Okay. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, you did. You did. Thank you.
All right. So who else has a question or any remark or whatever? Okay. So I think I will have to start calling names because I really like when everybody can say something. Okay. Jude O'Day. I think you weren't in the last class. Let's hear from you.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, I even joined this class a bit late. I actually forgot, but the few minutes I was able to join, I mean, the class went very, very well, and I understood everything that was said.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, so I'm assuming no
Yeah.
questions, right?
Just a question. Are we going to have an assignment from this class yet?
Okay. I will be discussing that on the group chats. Okay. Clinton, how about you? Okay.
Good evening.
Okay, good evening.
Yeah, not really. The class was great, and I don't really have a question. But it yeah. So I don't know. I have a bit of like the project that you said that you are going to working on in the capstone. I wanted to like ask, is it like we're building it in JS or using TypeScript?
We will be using JavaScript. Okay. Although what
Alright.
was originally written is TypeScript. Don't worry about this. I was just showing you my normal workflow. Okay. So don't bother about it so much. Those could be things that comes later on. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Adebisi.
All right. Good evening. My name is Inka actually.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Yinka.
Yeah. So class was great. I had to step out for a while, but for the part that I was available was awesome, to be honest. So I don't really have too much questions. I'll just go over the code to address my questions as well. But my question would just be like general. Can you paint an idea of how one would be able to get hired as a backend developer? I don't know if you can share some light on that because I'm just like I don't know like since we don't design pretty front ends, we're not going to be designing any I think that's potential clients can see. Right. So how do we showcase what we can do? I don't know if you can share some light to that.
Okay, so although that is a question, that's a good question, and that's something we will be expanding on later on. But to give you a little bit of a preliminary idea, so as a backend developer, your collaborations with a front-end developer is key. You could collaborate with a front-end developer. You could publish your documentation. You could try and do some demos as well. Okay, so and those are really ways that you could showcase your work. Okay, I know it's quite kind of tricky to how do you showcase your work as a backend developer, but thank you for that. I will be including it as part of the things we'll talk about before our capstone projects. Okay.
All right then. Thank you so much.
All right. Right. So I think who else? Emmanuel.
Okay. Yes. So based on this last question, like as a backend engineer, for example, now we don't need portfolio, right? Like what kind of capstone project? Like remember I built a capstone project, something that I've done. I want to showcase our work, and we don't know the front end part. How are we supposed to do that?
Like I told Yinka, we will be expanding on that when it is there, okay? So I don't really want you
Okay.
to worry too much about it yet, okay? It's a question that even me as a person, I'm trying to, answer and listen. There's no one right answer to things. But on the saying we don't need a portfolio, to be honest, everybody needs a portfolio, okay? A portfolio is just a collection of things that you put together to showcase your work. And as a backend engineer, that doesn't mean you can't have a way. It's just for you to get creative about it. If possible, in the meantime, I have some ideas on how to even put together my own work. Okay, so if those things could come together before the end of this program, this 8 weeks program, then I will share some of it with you. Okay, or at least guide you towards what I'm thinking. But again, we'll be talking about it when we've really gotten our hands dirty. Okay, so that's good. That's good thinking, actually. Let's take one last question from Mahmoud. Okay, so if I'm calling anyone's last name, you can always correct me. So I call you by your preferred name. Okay, so
Yeah, sorry, I don't really have any question. I actually have to like leave right now to a prayer or something. So I was also
all
supposed
right,
to round up from
that's
prayer.
understood. That's understood. All right. So yeah, we are done anyway. So I
So
think
I have
that's
one more
all.
question.
Okay, Emmanuel.
Like so how do I set up my laptop so that I'll be able to like do Java, to do the Node.js, but I don't want to
Okay.
disrupt my Python already. And I do run Python on my laptop and
All right,
backend that's Django.
Emmanuel, let's continue that on the
Yeah.
group chat. We've held everybody for 2 hours and 10 minutes. So I think it's good to
Okay.
disperse everyone so that we can all go and relax and rest. So I will be checking back on you on the group chat. You can tag me or whatever. Okay, so thank you everyone for your questions and feedback and listening. Thank you very much. You can enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, bye.
Bye. Thank you.